It was late afternoon when I left my sweetheart's place for the long walk home. By the end of the second mile, I was dragging my tail, as my granny would say. Something I ate for supper disagreed with me, and my belly ached something awful. I wanted nothing more than some peppermint tea, and a long sleep in my bed at home. I'd just reached the hunting trail that led to the other side of the low gap. It was a short cut that sliced nearly 2 miles off my trip, which sounded good to me. But I never used the trail at night, because it was reputed to be haunted. I didn't want to be bothering with no ghosts, especially not with my belly rumbling and my head aching. To heck with it, I decided. I felt so miserable, I wouldn't care if a haunt came up and said, "Boo," right in my face. I just wanted to get home, quick. The sun was setting with a spectacular display of oranges and reds when I reached the low gap. It was so pretty I paused in spite of my rumbling tummy to watch for a moment. Suddenly, there was a sound like a ton of dynamite exploding. Something flew through the air and fell down on the trail about 100 feet behind me. Boy howdy, that was not good. I jogged through the gap mighty quick and hastened down the trail. I don't know what made that sound or what it was that fell on the path, but it wasn't something I was going to look into tonight. No how, no way. I'd come back tomorrow in broad daylight and see what I could see then. About a mile below the gap, I realized something was following me. I could feel the hairs on my neck prickling as I sensed someone's eyes watching my every move. The person behind me kept pace, even when I quickened my steps. Alrighty then. I was no coward. If someone had something to say to me, they could say it to my dad blame face. My tummy was aching, and my head was pounding, and I felt as sore as a bear with a toothache. I whipped around, ready to confront the person that was following me. To my astonishment, I saw a man wearing a blue Civil War soldier's uniform. Oh boy! The Civil War ended almost 100 years ago. It was a haunt. Not good. The man stopped walking as soon as I turned around. His eyes were a funny reddish-brown color. They made my skin crawl. Not wanting to appear frightened, I said, "You are a United States man, I see." As soon as I opened my mouth, the haunt's eyes started glowing like they were on fire. He rose several inches from the ground and came swooping towards me, his arms extended like he was going to grab me and carry me away. I hit the ground hard, rolling off the path into the bushes, and the haunt flew over my head with a cry of rage. He was flying so fast that he crossed all the way over to another ridge 100 yards away. I jumped to my feet, lickety-split, and ran as fast as my legs would carry me toward the creek at the bottom of the hill. Haunts couldn't cross running water, so I knew I'd be safe if I could get there before that ghost got himself turned around. I could hear that haunt close behind me. His ghostly body was buzzing like a swarm of bees, and the red glow from his eyes lit up my path. I was only a yard ahead of the haunt when I reached the creek. I threw myself down the bank and tumbled into the running water, my bottom landing on a sharp rock. I looked up and saw the phantom pull up sharply, repelled by the running water. With a scream that chilled my blood, it rose up and up into the sky, burning so bright I had to close my eyes against the glare. Then it vanished, and the holler went dark around me. I fell back onto the pebbles of the creek, gasping for air as water splashed over my shaking body. My heart was a-pounding like a hammer on an anvil, and I turned over and lost my supper. I was never so grateful for water in my whole derned life. When I was sure it was safe, I ran for home like a frightened babe looking for its mama. I built up a big fire in the hearth, and sat so close to it my hair got singed. I drank several cups of peppermint tea while I dripped myself dry. Then I went to bed, cursing all ghosts and haunts and tummy aches from here to Sunday and back. I never took that shortcut home again, day or night. One haunt was plenty enough for me. There was once a railroad conductor named Joe Baldwin who was working for the newly rebuilt Atlantic Coast Line. The year was 1867, and the railroad had expanded to include a small station in Maco, North Carolina. Joe was assigned to the very last car in the train, and he executed his conductor duties to the best of his abilities aboard his assigned car. Then one night, something went wrong. Terribly wrong. The train was heading down the line toward the tiny Maco station when Joe's car started to slow down dramatically. Worried, Joe went forward to see what was happening, and realized that his car had come decoupled from the rest of the train. Joe's heart leapt into his throat when he saw the retreating lights of the train disappearing into the distance. His car was stuck on the tracks, and another train was following close behind them. With a shout of dismay, Joe grabbed his signal lantern and frantically ran the length of the car. Bursting out of the back door, he ran out on the rear platform. Yes, he could see the next train speeding toward them down the track. By the look of it, the engineer had not realized the danger. Joe leaned over the rail, desperately signaling for the engineer in the following train to stop. But the train barreled forward, speed unabated. Joe realized that the engineer must not have seen his signal light, or perhaps had not realized its significance. He kept waving the lantern frantically from side to side, shouting in vain over the huge rumbling force of the oncoming train. The engine grew larger and larger, and Joe's heart was in his throat as he realized the train was not going to stop. With a thunderous roar and the great shriek of massive metal hitting massive metal, the engine struck the helpless car. Joe, still at his post, was smashed between the two trains. His head was severed from his body. The signal lantern flew wildly out of his hand, rolling along beside the tangled metal of the two trains and miraculously flipping upright, still alight. Joe was the only fatality in the railway accident that night. The railroad officials never located his head. Shortly after the train accident, the Maco light began to appear on the tracks near the station. People traveling on the train, or crossing the tracks at Maco, would report a light shining in the distance when no train was due. The light would appear as a small ball, far down the tracks, and then would come closer and closer to the observer until it was the size of a lantern. People reported that the light moved back and forth frantically, as if it were signaling a train to stop, just as Joe Baldwin had done the night of the accident. The phenomenon became so common that the Atlantic Coast Line Railroad ordered their engineers not to stop for the light if they saw it as they were approaching Maco. Folks believed it was the spirit of Joe Baldwin, the conductor, desperately replaying his final moments over and over again, trying to get the following train to stop before it hit his helpless car. A couple were driving through Spokane, Washington one evening. They were hungry and tired and needed a break. Unfortunately, they were also broke. The wife went through her purse in the glove department and under the seats of the car, trying to drum up enough spare change to get them some kind of meal. She'd collect about $8 in quarters, dimes, nickels and a few dollar bills when her husband called her attention to a signpost reading, "Steak and eggs $3.85. It was attached to a motel-diner combination in downtown Spokane. Well, steak and eggs sounded much better than fast food to the hungry couple. Armed with their quarters, they parked the car and went into an old-time diner. It was a bit run down, the kind of place laughingly called a greasy spoon. But the food smelled delicious and the place was packed with customers. And the prices on the yellowing menus were just as good as advertised. But the couple had steak and eggs on their minds, and that's what they got. The service at the diner was excellent, the food equally so, and the bill, when it came, was only $5. The husband blinked at the low cost and, checking it, found the waitress had only charged the 85 cents for the second meal. The husband immediately called her attention to the error, happy to pay full price for such excellent service, even if it meant spending their very last dime to do so. The waitress thanked him for showing her the error, but explained that the restaurant's policy was to charge customers only what was written on the bill, even if the server made an error. Impressed, the couple paid the low bill and went back on their journey, but not before picking up a brochure for the attached motel. This was a place to recommend to their friends. And the couple did recommend the diner and motel in Spokane. Many times over. Until the day, one of their friends who was familiar with downtown Spokane questioned them closely about their experience. He'd never heard of a motel-diner combination in the area they described, nor of a restaurant by that particular name. The wife dug out the brochure, and he did recognize the name of the motel. Puzzled, the husband called the number on the brochure and asked about the attached diner. To his amazement, the staff member who answered the phone told him that the restaurant attached to the motel had burned to the ground many years before the couple had visited Spokane. Apparently, the couple had eaten steak and eggs at a phantom restaurant populated by friendly ghosts.